everyone. A very warm welcome to today's webinar, and kindly allow me to invite Laura, who will take us through the housekeeping and also the interpretation instructions before we start. Thank you and welcome, Laura. Thank you so much, Laura. A very warm welcome to you all. On behalf of HomeNet International, thank you for taking your time to join us today. It is wonderful to see the home-based workers in this call, the leaders, the representatives, and also the regional coordinators from different countries coming together for this important conversation. So you may have heard of a number of words or maybe some buzzwords that have been going on. And one of them would be things like digital platforms or maybe online marketplaces. But what do they really mean? So more importantly, how do they also affect the work that we also do as home-based workers? So that is some of the conversation that you're going to be having today to better understand how it really relates to the home-based workers. So at this time, before we start the engagement, I want to invite our sister Olive, the president of HomeNet International, to kindly give us a welcoming speech, and then we will go to our speakers for the day. Thank you so much for finding time, and welcome, Sister Olive.
Okay, good day, dear sisters and brothers in the world of work. On behalf of HomeNet International, it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you, the host, okay, to welcome all of you for today's webinar on understanding the platform economy, what it means for home-based workers. We are delighted to see participants joining us from different countries and regions. Thank you for taking your precious time to be with us. Today's webinar is particularly significant because it is the first time HomeNet International is organizing a discussion focused on platform economy. As the world of work continues to change rapidly through digital technologies, online marketplaces, and platform business models, it is very important that we understand what these changes mean for home-based workers and how it affect them. Home-based workers have long been part of the complex supply chain, often working invisibly from their homes or within the vicinity of homes. Today, digital platforms are creating new opportunities to access markets, customers, and income. At the same time, they are also raising important questions about working conditions, income security, rights, social protection, and representation. As organization representing the home-based workers, we need to understand that this development so that we can respond collectively and ensure that no workers is left behind in the digital transformation of work. Today's webinar is an opportunity to begin that conversation. As we look on, we are honored to be joined by distinguished speakers, Dr. Omar Rani, who will provide us with a practical understanding of platform economy. We have also Pat Horn, who will provide us an understanding about the recently concluded ILO convention and adopted on decent work in the platform economy with focus on workers' rights. And we will hear directly for our colleague, home-based worker, Sister Rebecca, who will share her personal experience of engaging with platform economy. Together, this will broaden our understanding of both the challenges and the possibilities that the platform economy presents for home-based workers around the world. We hope today's discussion will not only deepen our understanding, but also encourage all of us to reflect on how our organizations can support home-based workers in navigating these changes and challenges, advocate for their rights, and ensure that digital transformation leads to decent work rather than deeper inequalities. Thank you once again for joining us. We encourage you to actively participate by sharing your question and reflections during the discussion. And my gratitude also to HomeNet International Secretariat, of course, upon the leadership of our international coordinator, Jemima, in facilitating today's activity. Once again, thank you, speakers. Thank you, members of HNI, and thank you, networks of HNI. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to all of us. Thank you, Jemima.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Sister Olive, for your warm and insightful opening remarks. You effectively framed the significance of this platform economy for the home-based workers, setting a clear and productive tone for our discussion. So thank you so much for that welcoming remarks. So our webinar is going to be running for about 2 hours, and we hope that you will be patient with us so that we get to really understand what it really entails. So at this point, I will now move into the main session of today's webinar. And as I move on, I'll be welcoming or introducing our first speaker for the day, Sister Uma Rani. Sister Uma Rani is a senior economist at the research department of the International Labour Office. Since 2016, she has been working on digital transformation in the world of work, exploring how labor and social institutions can be strengthened to address economic and social inequalities. She coordinated the ILO's flagship report, that is the World Employment and Social Outlook in 2021, the role of digital labor platforms in transforming the world of work, and is currently co-editing the book From Taylorism to Algorithmic Management, a multi-sector analysis of technology, control, and also worker experiences. So today, Uma will help us understand what the platform economy is, how it is evolving globally, and who the platform workers are, and what opportunities and challenges it presents for the home-based workers. We are delighted to have you with us today, Uma. And without wasting more time, I want to give you the floor so that you take us into this conversation. Thank you and welcome, Uma. Thank Thank you, thank you so much, Uma. Thank you for that insightful reflection on your motivation to research, on platform work, the thought-provoking presentation. We have certainly learned a lot of things, what platform economy means, who are some of the platform workers. You have clearly stated that. You've also related it very well with home-based workers, and your pace was also very, very good. So thank you so much. And I know we have a number of questions or some reflections that we'd also want to hear from the participants. And I can see we already have Janvi's hand is up. And so I'll open the floor for questions, for comments and reflections. And kindly please feel free to either put it in the chat section, or you can as well raise up your hand. And then we will give you the opportunity to ask your question. And we will do as much as possible to accommodate many questions to the best, to address as many that the time will also allow us to address. So thank you so much, Uma, and welcome, Janvi.
Thanks a lot, Jemima, and thanks a lot, Uma. This is exactly what we wanted. I'm sure all the affiliates are very happy to hear your presentation. It was very insightful. Um, I have two questions, Uma, if I may ask them. The first one is that, because HomeNet International also has a campaign around Convention 177 going on right now. I think it was passed in 1996. It's been many years. And I remember Elaben talking to us about it, that it was not just a tough task to get it passed there, but also, when everyone was celebrating at ILC, the employers came up to her and said that we'll see you at home and it will never be ratified. And that holds true even today. In fact, in Asia, none of the countries have ratified, where we really do need the convention. You've drawn parallels between garment workers and platform workers, and rightfully so. My question is, at that point of time, and for Convention 177, the toughest task is the power asymmetry, right? There are many other reasons why we've not managed to ratify, but that is a big issue. I see the same with platform workers. They're up against many corporations, right? Large ones, actually. What do you see has changed for this category of workers? Because I see a lot of hope for platform workers, to be honest. So what do you see has changed? And maybe, we are being very hopeful. It may not have changed. So if you can give a little insight on that. And the second question is, because currently I'm doing my research in Bangalore with the daughters of garment workers. And, a lot of them are in platform economy. Young girls are there in platform economy. And what we see is a lot of fluidity in work, because also the work is not available. But, what do you think about these, because you're a researcher, about these specific categories of workers? Do you see them blurring going forward? Or do you think we'll have the same categories grow further? I mean, I'm just a little concerned about, do we just call them workers because they're going, they're organizing, and home-based work is a fallback option for many of these workers also. So, what do you think about these categories of workers? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janvi. Uma, could you please take one more question and then you respond to them collectively, if that's okay with you? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Janvi, for bringing us back to our convention, C177. I know adoption is very good, but it would be better if it is ratified, and it will be excellent if it is implemented. So we'll wait and hear what Uma has to say in the strategies that the platform workers are putting in place to ratify that. So I'll now welcome Rema. Kindly, you can unmute and then share with us your reflections or questions or maybe comments. Then I'll give it to Tatiana before we go back to Uma. Yes, Rema. Thank you, Rema. Thank you for that beautiful question that you've also asked. It's well noted, and I'm sure Uma would also respond to it. So, Tatiana, I'll give you the chance to also ask your question.
Thank you so much, Jemima. I think that Anisha was raising her hand as well, maybe before myself.
Yes, she did and dropped the hand. Anisha, I thought maybe Rema has asked the question that perhaps Anisha wanted to ask. That is why maybe she dropped her hand. So that's why I was giving you the opportunity, but I could also still check with Anisha. Anisha, is your question different from what Rema has asked? If you can hear me, Anisha. We can't see Anisha, sorry. So Tatiana, you could go ahead and then I'll come back to Anisha. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much for the presentation. Hello, everyone. I do have a kind of concern, I would say, and I would like to know your opinion. In Latin America, for some time, we have been saying that C177 is not enough to explain the wide range of home-based work. So it generally talks about the relation between small workshops and big production chains. In Latin America, we, well, generally don't have the relationship that we used to have with China or Indonesia. I mean, that relationship is almost non-existent today. I mean, we do have another type of home-based work. And my concern here is that C193 and platform work can maybe make us even more invisible, even with what you proposed or what you shared, because there are some sisters that maybe can start working on platforms, and through platforms, and as somebody was saying in the chat, they can sell their products. But also, we need to understand that technology is not very democratic. Most of our women workers do not have access to technology. They don't have digital literacy to be able to access platforms. So I believe that maybe for us, if we do not study or try to see how we can link C177 and C193, maybe we are going to be in an even worse situation, more invisible than before. I believe that both conventions are currently a danger for our demands. So I don't know what the ILO thinks about this, because most of the conventions talk about formalization and not social security rights. And formalization almost all of the time is understood as a kind of tax to states.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tatiana. Thank you for projecting the current status of the home-based workers. And I really appreciate you bringing it out, and also some of the concerns that you have around the convention C177 and also the convention the convention on the platform economy. Thank you so much, everyone, for those questions. I'll open it up to you, Uma, so that you can respond to the questions, as I'll be looking at the chat section to see if there's any that would be there. In the meantime, you could go ahead and respond to the questions that you've already received.
Thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
Marina, and thanks so much, Janavi, Rima, and Tatiana for these excellent questions, actually. And I'm not going to go one by one, but I think there's a lot of synergies that I see, so I'm going to pick them up and try to answer the question. Because what Tatiana said links to what both Janavi, you, and Rima have been talking about. Let me pick at one of the questions that you have, Janavi, about what has changed between 1996 and 2026. I think, if you remember, in 1996, I think this is a time when WICO was being set up too. And, informal workers and informal economy did not have a seat on the table. We did not have a chance to participate at the International Labour Conference discussions. I do remember very clearly how Rima Ben, Renana Ben have fought their ways through the contacts they've had at the ILO to push the agenda, though the issue of informal economy, informal sector originates late 60s, early 70s at the ILO. You have programs happening on the informal sector, but there's still not a recognition that there is a body of workers that needs to be brought to the fore for a discussion to have an engagement on it. And I think in 1996, when the whole discussion of, whether we adopt this particular convention or not, that happens, the employers just walked out of the room. They were not there to sign. They were not there to vote. And you had a different system than today. You had a majority system of a two-third majority. And with a two-third majority of the workers and the governments, we could ratify. And the reason why the governments could come and say that, well, we'll see you back home is they were very clear, the employers, because they were very clear, you can adopt it, but we will not ratify. And I think that is where the whole issue of social dialogue and tripartitism comes in. If you do not negotiate here within this international body about how you want to handle it, there's no way you're going to get anywhere to, you might even ratify, whether you get legislations and execution and implementation. That's another big thing, right? Like, even if I look at the minimum wage work I've done, we have a minimum wage convention that India has ratified for years, but you still have a huge number of workers who don't even get minimum wages. That's horrendously around 60%. So, there's a huge other mechanism that has to be there. But I think the point is that if in the negotiating body you are not negotiating and trying to have a consensus, it's important. The rules of the game have changed since 2022. If you know where it's no longer the majority, you need to have a consensus. You might have a majority in the room, but if you don't have a consensus, you cannot move ahead. And this is exactly what happened at the International Labour Conference this year, where even in cases where we did have a majority, any party could block a consensus. Any government could come in and block a consensus. I would say that with the 2002 informal economy discussion, the informal economy workers have managed to get their voice heard at the ILC. They don't still have a seat at the table, but at least they are heard. They're given space. They can be party to this discussion. And that's something we did see during the ILC this year. We had a lot of platform workers who were brought in. And I have to say, this is also something that the worker organizations really did at the international level. ITUC did a huge effort to bring in all of these workers onto the table and to see how the discussions happen. So that has changed. But I wouldn't say that the power asymmetry has changed. No, there is still power asymmetry. And I have to say that Pat was there and many of the others were there. We weren't sure till 3:30 that morning whether we would have, or even 6:30, whether we would have a convention or not. It was stalemate. There were issues around some of the key things around remuneration, on fundamental principles, on algorithmic management systems. So the issues were still there. Well, some of it was watered down, some of it is weak language, but we do have some. The way I look at this particular convention is, for me, is the juncture which we are in, the geopolitics and all of that. So it's much more a symbolic thing that a convention was passed. It was very clear that you needed to pass something. You couldn't just get out of that room without a convention. We had a great chair who was very good in trying to negotiate and get it. But having said all of that, I think we have to see the next steps. We have to see who are the ones who are going to ratify and whether adopt and ratify this convention. I think the coming year is very crucial to see whether this is a convention that gets adopted. I'm still quite optimistic for the simple reason that there are countries in Latin America who are already having regulations. There are countries in Europe and elsewhere who have regulations who might adopt it, that would lead to the ratification, who would ratify it, which would lead to the adoption of the convention. So that's something I'm more hopeful. But having said that, I think the next biggest hurdle is how do you negotiate what the pricing system is? How do you negotiate the algorithmic management system? So you have a lot of those issues that we still need to resolve. Like to just take the case of the Spain's riders law, you have algorithmic transparency, but to date, workers are not able to get proper wages. So there are lots of issues that are there, but I think we have to fight that one after the other. Now, I think bringing Tatiana back to the discussion, and I think, Tatiana, I'm with you there. I'm very worried about, I was very worried about C177, and that's still one of the conventions which I feel very strongly we need to do something, and the worker bodies can do a lot in trying to see how to push that implementation. But the fear is almost similar that I hope C193 doesn't fall into the same prey as C177, because that's exactly the fear I also have. But that's up to seeing what happens in the coming year. Now, I think there's a lot of, like what Rima Ben said, yeah, we heard you all, but can you tell me how I, as a home based worker, many of our workers, how do you link us to platform? I think the point I'm also trying to make is that don't assume that everything that is done on platform is great, is good. I think the challenges I tried to show you is that you might get onto the platform, but you will not realize how you're not only being precaritizing, but as Satyana says, there's more invisibilization that is happening. Okay? Now, let me take an example. I don't know how many of you have seen this or used the chat GPT or think about the autonomous cars. That's all AI driven, right? But you never you're never told who's actually training them. And this is where you have a lot of these invisible workers who are actually training much of these AI tools and products in either microtask platforms or in BPO companies. So I think we need to really understand before jumping in saying, yeah, it is giving some work, it is doing something, so it's not a bad thing, let's go on to it. Rather, I think the way I would like organizations like HNI and others to go is much more trying to see what are the worker power that is there, what are the worker rights, how can you actually negotiate on wages or pricing on one hand, but on the other hand, also demand government to create employment opportunities that allow you to have a ladder where you can actually ensure that educated people have not only decent working conditions, but more meaningful employment opportunities as they go by. And I think this is an issue today, not just for developing countries, for countries all over the world, because we can't have educated workers doing this kind of menial, repetitive tasks to train AI models and AI products. And I think that's something that we need to think about. Now, very clearly, there is fluidity in this work on platform work, and that's where the algorithmic management comes in, because that decides whether you can have a work for today or not, or you are completely deactivated. And I think that is where the whole crux of the platform becomes very important, and that's what we need to break in. And that's where the convention can play an interesting role. Now, new categories of works has been coming, but I think we need to somehow sort of try to understand it more as to what this work is, how does it actually help us in our development process, in our career trajectory, in our economy. I think we are not asking these questions. We say some job is better than nothing, but no, we need to have, even for our next generation, meaningful jobs. And there, the dialogue and discussion has probably got to be something else other than what is happening.
Thank you, Uma. Thank you for that comprehensive response to the questions. I can see we still have two more hands. Anisha Ben is back, and the hand is steadily up. Anisha, if you can hear me, are you able to unmute? And maybe we take these two last questions, and then we move to the next session of this webinar. So yes, Anisha, if you can hear me. And no, you are
Now,
breaking. You are breaking. Can you try one more time? Anisha, could you kindly speak? You're on mute. Yes. Can you try? It's breaking. When you say audible, it's very audible, but the rest of the words are not audible. Mhm. Kindly try and go ahead. I'll let you know when we lose you. We lost you, Anisha. Are you able to type it in the chat? Anisha, we lost you. Are you able to type it in the chat and then I'll read it if that's okay with you? I personally could not get either of the questions. Uma, did you hear Anisha well?
no, I couldn't hear. She can probably post the
Right.
question and I
Okay.
can answer. I also saw Farhad's question, and I see that she
Mhm.
has put her hands down.
Yes, please, Anisha, kindly put it in the chat and then I'll read it. Fat, your hand was also up, and I can also see in the chat you have written something.
Yeah, I
And
can
your
just
question is,
respond.
how do you see the impact of data centers on climate change? And then there's also something that you added in later on that you asked, don't you think this should be an advocacy point? Are these the questions that you wanted to ask, or you have a different question? Fat, if you can hear me. Maybe Uma, you could respond to the question that was already posted on.
Absolutely, Farad. There's no question about the data centers leading to environmental challenges. I think this is a big issue that is being taken up, and there are many who are fighting against it. And I think we need to take that on. And about the advocacy point, I'm not sure which one did you refer to. And yeah, there are lots of things there for advocacy. You know, a lot of this research that we do can be used for advocacy and can be used to improve the lives of the people. But I think one point, I think Jemima, you made it there, but I want to highlight it more forcefully. Also, from what Tatiana said, is that don't be under the impression, you know, already one of the issues 30 years ago with home based workers was invisibility. They were working in homes, nobody knew that they were working, and to do labor force surveys and to capture that was a big challenge. Now, platforms is even double invisible. You cannot even say that you're doing any work because it's all in the cloud. And I think this is something I'd like you to keep in mind. And with that, I think I'd like to pass the floor to Jemima to take the conversation further. Thank you so much for these very good questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Uma. Thank you, everyone, for making the conversation very interactive. Thank you for those thoughtful questions. We are grateful. And there are also some reflections that have been posted on the chat, and I just quickly want to share them, and then I'll move to the next session. So there is Tammy who says, Facebook groups, they are the most common channels for offering services such as sewing, cleaning, cooking, repairs, beauty treatments, caregiving, and other in-home jobs. In Nicaragua, WhatsApp Business is widely used. So many people promote their services there. Thank you so much, Tammy. There's also Carlos from Latin America who's also saying there are digital platforms that also pay content creators. And he's also listed the content creators, and they pay them only a fraction of what they are worth. Thank you so much, Carlos, for that reflection. There's also Suntaris also reiterated that many of the home-based workers will be left behind because of economic status, because of no digital devices, so they cannot access technology. And then Jemima has also added in that another strategy that would also be helpful when it comes to lobbying or advocating for the ratification of ILO C-193 is for the informal workers within a country to build a coalition across sectors who are in the platform economy to lobby and advocate for the ratification and also implementation of the convention. Thank you so much for the appreciation.
Jemima has found.
Yeah, I cannot also hear her.
I think Jemima has intermittent problem. So maybe probably as we can move into, or is there any hanging question posted in the chat box? I
No,
think
sister.
yeah. Okay. If there's none, any last word from Omi for us to our participants?
Olive, I don't think there's anything else, and we can probably move on to the next speaker.
Yes. Laura, please. Who will be the next speaker to give us some information on this?
Yes. Give me 1 second, please. Just
Is it already Pathorn to share with us the recent ILO ILC?
Sorry, if I can just
How
come in, Sister Bani.
Okay.
Sister Olive, our next speaker will be Sister Rebecca, who will share her experience as a
Okay.
home-based worker.
Okay, please. Sister Rebecca, it's your floor now. Can we give a cue to Sister Rebecca? Yeah.
Rebecca, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are.
Yes. Where is it now? Yeah, you can start now, Sister Rebecca, please.
Thank you, and I greet all of you, depending on where you are. I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak about economy platform. I'm known as Rebecca Nyaluke from Tanzania, and I work in EXCO committee of HNI in Africa. I'm the chair lady of Waki in Tanzania, and my work involves making garments from batik. When I am making batik, I use the cooking method, and I've been doing that from 2005 to date. I started by selling to my neighbors and to schools, and I moved later to social media via Facebook. And when I was unable to continue doing business online, especially on Facebook, I decided to start using WhatsApp groups and status. So I have been continuing with WhatsApp groups and status up to now, and that is how I do my business. On Facebook, I received orders through the numbers that I used to put on my account. And using WhatsApp, I formed a WhatsApp group specifically meant to market my goods, where I post my goods. I ensured that people that I know joined, and based on that, I started receiving orders. And I was lucky to get friends from my country and outside my country online, and I was able to pay to sell rather few goods Facebook, but I rely mostly on WhatsApp up to now. There is a lot of advantages, but I also experienced challenges while selling online. When I was selling online, you see, you have people that you don't know online. So those people will order for batik, and they will ask for designs that you've made. So after I have gotten their orders, I sell them. They decide that they cannot pay before they see their products. But after you have sent your products, they say, let them sell first before they can pay you. And that was Facebook. Later, on Facebook, there was someone that I knew. I decided to sell to that person, and we agreed that the person will only pay after selling because of the economic situation, as is always the case for the small scale holders. But as a result, the paying time became longer. They paid very little for a longer time, and it led to losses on my part. And I also experienced scammers online. There is a time I used a bot to send my products to Zanzibar, because we are United Republic of Tanzania. But if we have to go to Zanzibar, we have to go via water. So I delivered what 3 million shillings commodity. They paid for the first time, they paid for the second time, and because I had now gotten used to this client, they asked for more, for 5 million worth of commodities, but they did not pay. They stopped communicating. I went to the police station to report because I could not get back my things. And I did not have any identification documents to help me reach this client. So I got 5 million worth losses. And that we have rain seasons that also affect us, because sometimes we deliver via bus. Someone calls you after seeing your commodities online via WhatsApp or status. And I have customers from different regions. When they order, I send via bus, where I can't say using a bot or Uber. So we opt to send using the buses that are used to ferry other people. But sometimes when it's flooding, we realize that during heavy rains, the vehicles will take long, or they'll even experience accidents, and as a result, they will not deliver. And those from these regions have to get their luggage before they pay you. So I have challenges of receiving my pay, because nobody wants to pay for what they have not seen. Batik is a cloth. People want to get the clothes they ordered. They want to see if it is the same quality they ordered before they can send money. Then we have people who opt to be rude, who opt to be abusive. After they just you deliver your luggage, they tell you, I will send my money after you deliver. After they have received the commodities, you cannot get your commodities back. They tell you, no, you sold substandard products, so I will not pay you. It is up to you to make sure that how you find out how I send your luggage back to you. So you become into a conflict, because you want the clients to pay you before you deliver, but the clients, once they don't have money to pay you, they start blaming that on your products, and this affects our business. We have language challenges, especially across borders. Sometimes I get clients outside the country. Most of the time, they want to communicate using a different language that you don't communicate. I speak Kiswahili while doing my business, but the people who want to order from me are ordering using English. Some time ago, I found a Zimbabwean who used a local language, but I knew they needed batik. Communication breakdown made me not be able to sell my products. So the person could not even speak English well. I tried using Google to help me, but I could not decipher the messages. So I got a loss of that client. Sometimes people are using our business for their own benefits, because those big clients, they have their own business which are registered. So us who produce products, we get losses, because the chemicals we need to make batik, sometimes we get sick, we have to go to the hospital, and hence the money we got, we use it in hospital. But the people who buy from us, they add value a little bit, then they increase the price. They saw your products online, they just do a few changes, and they put their own labels, and they sell internationally as if the products are coming from them, and they sell as much as 5 or 6 times or even 4 times more than the price they bought. I used to sell at the airport rather, We had people who could buy in bulk at the airport because they sell to foreigners. The foreigners pay higher prices. But when I'm selling to that person, it's the same price I use to sell to my neighbor. This is a large scale business person who will get a lot of a lot of money. They sell in dollars, but they refuse even to cater for our fares. They even want us to pay at low prices than what we sell to those small scale business people. So people who are in a position to ferry their commodities to different areas of the world benefit more than us. And those are part of the challenges we face. And I would like to say that education is very important. I failed running my business on Facebook because of lack of knowledge. I got somebody who decided to be my marketer on Facebook. They asked me to pay them a given amount of money. Then we started with my own local country before we can go to other regions. But the good thing is that I had gotten some knowledge from HNI, from Eduardo, but with all that, I was not able to keep up with Facebook, because even after paying this person, I did not benefit in any way. I would also like to advise based on my own experience, based on how I do business. I will say it is better you deal with a few people that you know, that you have agreement and you can reach them, you know where they live, you have their phone number, have even a copy of their national ID. This will be beneficial to your business because you will know where to find these people. And the easiest way for people who are more knowledgeable, if you are more knowledgeable, if you are not knowledgeable, the easiest way to work is using WhatsApp and your status. It doesn't need a lot of knowledge like Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. When you go to Instagram, Twitter, they hack your accounts. So on Instagram, there are people, middlemen, who use the accounts, but they don't pay you. So for me, I will say that the beneficial platform for me is WhatsApp. I have reached even, I've gone to, when I'm going anywhere, I put on my own samples. When I go to the bank, I get orders. When I am walking around with my designs, wearing them, I get orders. So it's better you have people you know than those big platforms that you don't even know how they run. If you are knowledgeable, it's okay. If you are unknowledgeable, just use WhatsApp. If you are knowledgeable, use Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Don't be a person that trusts people easily. When people order, they pay for the first time, you get relaxed because they paid. The second time they pay. But from my own experience, when they could not pay the third time, don't be easily fooled and deliver your commodities. It is better they pay you first before you can send your luggages. Show them on your status or in your groups the designs you have, because there is a time where I took a loan to deliver. But when I was paying my loan, I could not even rely on my business to pay the loan, and I incurred losses. And even they came and take some of my things because I could not pay. And for me to be able to pay, my husband had to help me to pay the loan that I had taken because it was getting difficult for me. We have Bolt, but we have Bolt employees that can deliver your luggages. Not Bolt, rather bots. Sometimes you send them, they don't even reach to the destination. Then they cut communication. So you can't reach them. So when you are only relying on the phone, you can think that it's a network problem, but it's the scammers. We have people that we rely on who are scammers. Scamming comes from the people like Boda Boda, from Uber, from rides. Right now, Bold is the most reliable to me, but we still have scammers who are not faithful, whom we cannot rely on. Right now, we experience a lot of scammers. You have to be knowledgeable on how to do your business, on how not to fall in hands of scammers, and learn how you can be successful by ensuring there is security in your business, and that will be very resourceful when you are running your business. That is my own experience, and I've also given you some advice based on my own experience. I thank all of you for these opportunities, and if we could have somebody who could help us to be selling outside the country, it could be very beneficial to us. Batik relies on the colors, so you have to look for the required colors, and colors comes in different variations. So if you want to start doing business outside your country, you need a specialist to deal with that. All the processes that are required for your batik to be certified, it's very hard and it is very costly. For you to be able to sell outside the country, it's very costly and it's not easy for me, and it's a challenge to me. I got a market outside the country in Germany. Somebody in
Sister Rebecca?
Germany had asked me
Sister
if
Rebecca?
I'm certified.
Sister
I would like
Rebecca,
to
can
thank
you
you and
wind
thank you
up?
very much for this opportunity. Okay, I've finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Sister
Thank you
Rebecca.
so much, Rebecca. We
Oh,
are very grateful.
Jemima is here.
Oh, sorry. And sorry that I dropped off the call earlier on. I lost power, but I'm back. Thank you, Sabani, for stepping in when I was not in. So thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you for sharing with us your experience. I know one big issue that home-based workers have always had is access to market. That has been a very big hindrance, even when it comes to looking for markets for the products. But unfortunately, even with the coming of platform economy, where we thought it would all go well, Rebecca has already shared with us some of the experiences that she has had and some of the advice that would also help us. So I have noted your hand, Rema, and I just want to quickly go to our next speakers. And after Rebecca and Pat has talked, then we will be able to come back to the question session. So I have noted your hand, and you'll be the first person that I'll give the chance to ask the question. For those of us who also have questions from Rebecca, kindly just put them in the chat section, and then we will be able to ask those questions. Thank you so much, Titin. I've also noted your question in the chat. So at this time, I want to welcome our second presenter in this session, and that is our sister Patron. And Patron is responsible for women in the informal employment, globalizing and organizing work on collective bargaining in the informal economy. She's the founder and also a senior advisor of StreetNet International, and previously served as its international coordinator from around 2002 to 2019. She's also a veteran trader unionist and organizer. She has worked with informal economy workers for more than 4 decades and continues to represent the community constituency in South Africa's National Economic Development and Labour Council, that is also known as NEDLAC. And in 2026, she led WIGO's delegation to the Committee on Decent Work in the Platform Economy at the International Labour Conference. So Pat will build on what we have already learned by exploring the international labor landscape that is reflecting on the efforts that led up to the adoption of ILO C177, That is the Homework Convention for the home-based workers, and also the recently adopted ILO Convention 193 in June 2026 at the 114th International Labour Organization Conference on the setting standards for decent work in the platform economy. Additionally, she will highlight why these discussions are important for home-based workers and what opportunities they present to strengthen workers' rights, representation, and also protection. So we are delighted to have you today, Part 1, and we also look forward to your presentation to give us a deeper understanding of the conversation we are having today. Feel most welcome, and I give the floor to you, Part 1.
Thanks, Jemima, and good afternoon to everybody. Let me get stuck straight in so that I don't end up going over that little alarm that you set. So what I'm looking at is a comparison between ILO Convention 193 on decent work in the platform economy and Convention 177 on homework, in order to look at these issues from the point of view of home-based workers. And fortunately, Uma has already explained quite a bit about both of those in her presentation. So I'm going to go a little bit more into the actual issues that we find ourselves dealing with in relation to these two particular instruments of the ILO. So basically, in the 1990s was when the ILO started to actually table discussions of standard setting in what was in those days called new forms of work.
Hello, Pat. Pat, if you can hear me, could you please project in a slideshow the presentation?
Jemima, the reason I don't do that is because when I do that on my computer, it sticks on slide 1. So I'm afraid I have to do it in this form because otherwise it sticks on slide 1. And then
do you want me to show it? Because
and can we help you project it from our end?
Okay, that can be fine.
All right, thank you. We will do that immediately. So maybe you could just stop sharing and then we share from our end. Thank you. And sorry for that.
Sure. Okay, have you got it in front of you now?
Yes, yes.
Thanks. Okay, so basically in the 1990s, the ILO started to place some standard setting discussions onto the agenda for the International Labour Conference in order to discuss what was in those days called new forms of work. So they first placed a convention and recommendation on part-time work onto the agenda for 1993 and 94. Of course, there's nothing very informal about part-time work, but just different hours. And that convention was discussed and then adopted in 1994. The second convention was the Convention on Homework. That was 1995 and 1996. And the third one was the Convention on Contract Work, well, it was supposed to be, 1997 and 98. So Uma has already mentioned the incident which happened in the course of the discussion on homework. The employers were not happy at all about all three of these new conventions because they didn't want new regulation about these forms of work. And they were advocating very hard already at that time, and it's continued pretty much solidly ever since then, to move away from regulations of new forms of work, which they preferred to remain unregulated. And I think the reasons are obvious. Next slide. So when it came to the discussion for Convention 177 on homework, during the first year, there was a very big fight. And in 1996, as Uma already talked about, the employers created a scandal by boycotting the second year's discussion in 1996. This didn't stop the convention from being adopted. It was adopted in 1996. But apart from what happened later, the reluctance to ratify it, even the convention itself, it did not cover own account or self-employed home-based workers, only home-based workers in an employment relationship. So we totally lost that part of the fight. We were at the ILO fighting for this. It was the first instrument we had fought for in a group of organizations, which included SEWA. It included the Self-Employed Women's Union in South Africa, which was a precursor to StreetNet. We fought very hard for own account workers to be included, but we lost that fight. Next slide. Okay, as a follow-up to that passing of Convention 177, which only covers until today, it still only covers home-based workers with an employment relationship. There was a further discussion in 2022, which was an ILO resolution on decent work and the informal economy. This was not an instrument. It was not a convention or a recommendation. It was a discussion which resulted in a resolution. There was a big fight on the status of own account or self-employed workers, but this fight was won. It had to go to the vote, and it was won by a majority vote. And this clause defines own account work because own account workers are different from entrepreneurs. And so the definition of own account work, which is in clause 4 of the resolution, says workers in the informal economy include both wage workers and own account workers. Most own account workers are as insecure and vulnerable as wage workers and move from one situation to the other. Because they lack protections, right, and representation, these workers often remain trapped in poverty. And of course, this applied to many home-based workers because of the fact that many home-based workers are own account home-based workers. Next slide. The problem is, although there was now an official definition of own account workers, still, until today, most member states do not really understand how to develop labor market policy and legislate for coverage of own account workers in laws and policies. As a result, all kinds of own account workers, whether they are home-based workers, whether they are street vendors, whether they are waste pickers, no matter what, whether they are own account agricultural workers, they still find themselves excluded from workers' rights that are exclusively for employees according to labor laws, such as those that recognize the right to form and join trade unions, or processes such as collective bargaining, which are commonly understood to only apply to employers and employees, instead of to all workers and their negotiating counterparts. And this is despite the fact that the ILO conventions state that they are applicable to all workers, including own account workers. But this doesn't often translate into the labor laws in different countries, and you'll find that own account workers remain excluded in many national laws. Next slide, please. So basically, to fast forward then to the 2025-2026 discussion on decent work in the informal economies, very many digital platform workers are own account workers, especially in the global south. Sometimes in the global north, they have regulation that has what is called a presumption of employment. But this doesn't apply too much in the global south, and it doesn't apply uniformly to all digital platform workers. So when we started to participate in the Committee on Platform Work, we did not want own account workers to be excluded again, as it happened with Convention 177 on home work. So in the new convention, which is called 193, Article 1B of the new convention text defines a digital platform worker as a person employed or engaged to work for the provision of service organized and or facilitated by a digital labor platform. Secondly, for remuneration or payment. And thirdly, importantly, it states, regardless of their classification of status in employment. This is a really important clause because it basically says that all platform workers would be covered. So in principle, this should cover our concerns, right? Next slide. Unfortunately, not, because there are many escape clauses which follow this Article 1, which are escape clauses for governments and the employers who control digital platforms. The point is made frequently that digital platforms on their own cannot exploit workers. But we all know digital platforms are controlled by somebody, and basically the employers are those people who control the digital platforms. So there's at least 4 places in that same convention which give an escape. So Article 2, paragraph 2 of the convention text says, where special problems of a substantial nature arise, member states may exclude from the application of all or part of the convention either limited categories of digital labor platforms or limited categories of digital platform workers. There are provisions after that to say, to limit the circumstances under which they can make those exclusions. But this possibility of making exclusion does create a bit of an escape clause for digital platforms. Then again, in Article 9, which is talking about, it says each member shall take measures to correct classification of digital platforms in respect of the existence of an employment relationship. So it still excludes platform workers who do not have an employment relationship. In other words, own account workers. Then Article 10, paragraph 3, which is about remuneration, says each member shall give consideration as to whether the measures, which means remuneration measures, adopted under paragraph 2A of this article shall be provided to digital platform workers who are not in an employment relationship. In other words, those rights exist for those who do have an employment relationship, and they can consider whether or not to apply them to those who don't have an employment relationship. Article 12, which is about social protection, says that each member shall take measures to ensure that digital platform workers enjoy social security protection on terms no less favorable than those applicable to other workers with the same classification or status in employment. And this clause comes up again in Article 23, which talks about the comparison with other workers. Next slide, please. So what does this mean? So what it does mean is that unlike in the case of Convention 177, own account or self-employed digital platform workers are not excluded by the Platform Workers Convention as they are in Convention 177, but instead they are relegated to a second-class status in comparison to those who have an employment relationship. So it's pretty discriminatory, actually, and that remains a part of the convention. However, in principle, home-based workers then who start to use apps for their access to work would be covered by both Conventions 177 and 193. However, own account home-based workers are not covered by C177 at all, but they could be covered by Convention 193 to some extent, at least in relation to this Article 1B3, which I talked about, which is quite a good overall covering clause, which states that the convention in general is supposed to apply to all workers, even if there are these other clauses which then contradict that. And there, the question of to what extent a country will respect Article 1B3 more, or respect these other clauses that allows them to discriminate between workers with an employment relationship and workers who don't have, that will depend on the national laws. So basically, when it comes to home-based workers, looking at where they are in relation to both of these, once you are a home-based worker who is starting to use digital platforms and apps, certainly there's the possibility that you could be covered by Convention 193. And if you are an own account worker, certainly you would be more covered by that than you would be by 177. But a lot of the issues that have been raised in the questions and in the discussion are issues that workers in the informal economy in general, and especially own account workers, continue to be covered by, even when it comes to implementation. So the question of how far you would be covered, there's nothing automatic in either of these conventions. The question as to whether we are going to have ratifications or not, the indications seem to show that there's a lot of interest in having regulation, especially from governments. And particularly governments in the global south are very interested in having regulation. And those from the global south were not particularly interested in making the same distinction between own account workers and those who are not. So we could probably be optimistic that we may see more ratifications in the case of this. But to be honest, whether or not our governments ratify the convention or not, the thing we have to fight for is the laws we are going to get in our own countries. And then we need to make sure that our own country's laws go much further on the question of the rights for own account workers than the convention does. So let me stop there. I've heard the alarm, and luckily this was the last slide. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present this angle to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pat. We are very grateful for that informative and insightful presentation that you've also shared with us. We are very grateful. We also appreciate you helping us better understand the whole landscape when it comes to global policing and what happens at ILC. And thank you for the representation. We are still very grateful that you are there to also help us understand it. So at this time, I want to open up the floor for questions. And I know Rema had already raised up her hand, and she had a question previously from Rebecca. And so I'll be opening it up so that we have questions from both Rebecca and Pat. And then I've also noted there's also a question in the chat that I'll also be reading after this. So Rema, if you can hear me, kindly unmute and ask the question. We have a few minutes, and I want to use it so that we respond to all the questions that we have. Yes,
Thank
Rema.
Thank you for the presentation. It was an excellent example of how women can do the marketing and things like that. But I have one or two questions. First is, what are the, in her business, what are the training programs she has undergone for going through this business? The second is, when did she got break even in her business? Because she was doing her business, she was fighting two, three very, she has done good work. So at how many years after that she got break even in her business? The third is that what one message she would like to give to our all home-based workers, which is most important. Education, she has already discussed that education is most important. But one important message to all home-based workers so that they can also become entrepreneur. And she is working alone, or she has enterprise, 2-3 people are working with her. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rema. I believe that question is for Rebecca. So Rebecca, if you could hear me, kindly respond.
Yes.
And then I'll give the chance to Tatin and the question. Yes, Rebecca, if you can hear me.
Thank you very much for your question. I'll answer the first question. For how long I have done this business? I started in 2005 to up to date. I think it's about 21 years since I started my batik business. And since I started my batik business, I looked for different markets. I started with our neighbors, and I started just after getting married, and I had just been married and when I started my business, kwa hivyo. So that is how I went on. My message to home-based workers, which I can tell them, is to invest. They should invest when they start businesses so that when they meet challenges, they have something to back them up. So if they don't invest for themselves, when they go into losses, then they are likely to go down. So they can get into groups where they are able to get credit. For example, I belong to groups where I can get credit. For example, SACCOs, where I can get some money to take care of my business in case of eventualities. So I think that is how they are able to help themselves, and they should also be able to stand firm while doing business so that they don't just jump into business, and they should also examine their clients. On another question, I am not alone. I work with other small-scale business operators, and I work with other people who help me to produce and distribute. So I am able to pay them according to the kind of clothes that they make. I work with youths and also women, and there are those that are educated and those that are not. So I am able to make sure they produce in good time so that we meet our clients' needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Rebecca. And just to add on, Titin is also checking what kind of payment methods do you use between you and your clients when they get the product. So that is also another question from Titin. If you can hear me, what is the payment method that you use? Is it a digital payment method?
Thank you very much. I use Lipa number. When they pay, when I withdraw, I don't, I'm not charged for the withdrawal. The client is charged, and I am able to use my full amount. So I use Lipa number, which is my account where I get to be paid. And those at home pay via cash. Because when I make batik, there are those that come and they pay via cash, and I deposit in my phone account, and then I also transfer to Lipa number without any charges. Thank you. Thank you. I am done.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for that question. And then there's also a question for Pat. And this question, we have it from Masuda, who's checking. They are still really struggling with recognition within their country. And perhaps I'll just let Masuda talk so that we get to understand which country we are talking about. And they're just wondering how do they move forward in these steps that are already way advanced, and especially people are already going to the platform economy. People are now looking at ratification of the platform economy convention, and they're still on recognition. So Pat, if you could hear me and you're in a position to respond to that, we'll be very grateful. Or maybe hearing from Masood to tell us which country context are we talking about.
It's Bangladesh.
Okay, thank you. So yes, Pat, you could help us understand that. And I can also see your hand is up, Janvi. I'll give you the chance after that.
So basically, the question of recognition is a question that is that all sectors of work in the informal economy struggle with. And that one doesn't come through a convention. That one comes through hard struggles on the ground. And platform workers, when they started to come up, immediately faced the same struggles because they were not recognized as workers. The reason why there's quite a lot of recognition today of platform workers is because there have been quite big struggles by organizations of platform workers even before the convention was passed. So in Kenya, for example, there's been recognition by the government of platform work and some legislation put in place on platform work already, and in several other countries as well. And that's because the platform workers started to get themselves organized and to lobby the lawmakers and the policymakers. So the question of the recognition is something you don't need to wait for a convention for. When you are fighting for the recognition, and whether it is that you have to take to the streets or you arrange policy meetings with your government authorities, now that there's a convention, you may be able to then add that to your information that you give to convince the authorities to recognize you. But there's two levels of recognition. The one is the authorities, but the other is also the general public. And that one you can do a lot by spreading social media about what you do. Also, if you have contacts with the media. So there's two different levels. So you can struggle for recognition as workers by putting out publicity for the public to read, to recognize you better. And then also, of course, lobbying and advocacy with the government. So those are the things which are needed. And then where we have conventions, that sometimes helps us a bit. It strengthens it a bit for us to show that we've got recognition at international level. But by itself, the conventions don't do that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pat. So we already some minutes past the hour, and I just want to give this chance to Janvi and Goma, who had already raised their hands, so that they can give us their final reflections or questions or comments, and then we'll go to the next final session of this webinar. Yes, Janvi, if you can hear me.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jemima, and thank you, Rebecca and Sister Pat, for these excellent presentations. I have a quick question for Sister Rebecca, is that what are your maybe 3 key asks from the government of Tanzania if you were to have a policy for own account home-based workers who work on platforms? And to Sister Pat, one of the big issues for home-based workers is that they're own account workers, but also they're not on the regular platforms that you per se, they're on WhatsApp, Facebook, those sort of things. So how do you navigate that part of it? Is it included in when people keep talking about platforms, are these included or not? Because at national level, that has been one of the struggles.
Thank you. And Goma, could you please also share your reflections? And then I go back to Pat and Rebecca.
Thank you, Jemima. My question is for Pat as well. Is there any provision related to regulating platform owners as well? For example, the riders, they'll have to pay petrol, they'll have to repair their vehicle, and there could be many hidden costs, as well as sometimes they will have to pay penalty when they keep their on no parking site. So these kind of things they don't care, and they just cut the commission like 20% from their income. Like if one ride is of 100 rupees, then they'll have to pay 20 rupees. Like this, home-based workers are also using their one equipment, their one place, and they are spending lots of hidden cost from their one bucket. So how it has been calculated, or it has been taken care while making this convention, and that is addressed somewhere or not? Just want to learn that. Thank you.
Thank you. As a worker, what I would ask the Tanzanian government is how home-based workers, how are they able to be assisted to get their rights? How would they assist us as home-based workers to get our rights? So as workers who are recognized by the government, how are they able to recognize us? So they could be able to answer how they are able to recognize us. I also realized we also had a celebration for World Women Day, and we were able to read a speech, and we explained the challenges that we go through, and this was taken by the government. So we invited the government, and they listened to us, but up to now we've not been able to get the required feedback. And also what I saw is that when we start from the grassroots, it is important because we also are able to get feedback from higher level. So we were able to invite our area MP, and with all this in consideration, he only took our request and left. And we are lucky. I would say we are lucky to get women platforms, and we participate. And we would say that women should be able to assist each other. Now, in the C177, there are some challenges when it comes to being answered one-on-one, but we need some insurance, but sometimes we succeed to a very low level, especially on low-scale workers. I would also say we have also succeeded in our country, and I would say we start in the health sector, and then we also look at the platform where we sell our goods. And the main problem is how to get the payments. I would like to tell the government that we are crying out for that. In as much as they have been able to do as much as they could. And my main question is, how are they able to protect the home-based workers? Thank you. I'm not sure if I've answered it right.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for responding to that question.
Dada Rebecca,
so I'll invite Pat. Pat, there was also a question for you.
Yes, so basically the question that Goma asked about the deductions that are often made from the payments to, particularly to the riders. In fact, there's a lot of these kinds of abuses, which is one of the reasons why which led to there being this kind of a discussion in the first place, because a lot of abuses such as deactivation, deducting money that you don't know what it's for, that one is addressed in Article 11. It requires the digital labor platforms to provide information about firstly about their remuneration, and secondly, any deductions that are made. So they wouldn't be able to just do deductions which you haven't had explained to you, and then you'd be able to contest it. And then there's an Article 15, which basically covers the question of how to deal with disputes. It basically places a responsibility on the platforms to take responsibility for resolving disputes, all of the kind of issues which they never had any responsibility for before. And then on the question of what is the other issue? Sorry. The responsibility of the platforms is to then give information in an easily readable way to stop the practice of unilateral actions on the part of the platform. So those are covered in various different articles in the convention, so that there's some level of control where there was none before at all, on the platforms being able to just do what they like without any consultation. There's now an obligation to consult, and there's an obligation to consult in an understandable way. Janvi, on the question of how you decide what kind of home-based work would be covered by the platform work convention or what wouldn't, basically, there isn't a list that anybody's done to give a list of what kind of workers are covered by the platform convention and which ones are not. It gives a generic definition, the one that I read to you before. So when you're looking at home-based workers and the extent to which different kinds of use of apps will make a person into a platform worker or not, you have to go back to the definition, which says the term digital platform worker means a person employed or engaged to work for the provision of service organized or facilitated by a digital labor platform. So it'll depend on what exactly the person is using the platform for. If it's not for the provision of a service, and then also for remuneration or payment. So those are the two issues that will determine whether that kind of work falls under this convention or not. It's like any other convention. You study the kind of worker that you have and you see whether they comply with the definition which is in the convention. That's basically I think the task which HomeNet will then have, is to sort of carefully look at the kinds of work which is done by home workers with digital platforms or with apps, and determine which ones of those fall into the categories that Uma talked about that won't really be covered by this convention, and then which ones will be covered. So it means, doing that analysis based on and then getting policymakers to agree with your opinion, because they may want to exclude everybody. But if it's not justified by what's in the definition, then of course you can fight to be included. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for your thoughtful questions, for the insights that you have shared, for the reflections. Julia and Apsara, I acknowledge your reflections on the chat. I'm very grateful. However, at this last minute, allow me to invite Sister Idilueza to give us a vote of thanks on behalf of the entire team of HomeNet International. And thank you, everyone. Welcome, Sister Idilueza.
Hello, good morning. Good afternoon. Well, as we come to an end of today's webinar, it's a pleasure to offer a heartfelt vote of thanks on behalf of HomeNet International. First and foremost, I would like to extend our sincere appreciation to all of our speakers for sharing their time, their knowledge, their experiences with us. Our deepest thanks to Dr. Umar Rani for providing such a clear and insightful introduction to the platform economy. Your presentation helped us understand how digital platforms are transforming the world of the work and why it's important for organizations representing home-based workers to engage with these changes. You offered us a valuable base to think about opportunities and challenges that the platform economy represents. We would also like to express our heartfelt gratitude to our sister Rebecca for sharing your personal experience. So thank you very much for talking so openly about your journey. Your story reminded us that behind every policy discussion and every digital platform are real workers, real livelihoods, and real aspirations. Our sincere thanks to Pat Horn also for helping us understand the significance of the recent discussions at the International Labor Conference and Workers' Rights. Your reflections highlighted the importance of ensuring that the voices of informal workers, including home-based workers, are represented as international labor standards and platform work continue to evolve. I would also like to thank all of our participants from across the different regions. Your presence, thoughtful questions, and your active participation made today's discussion richer and even more meaningful. HomeNet International is built on the strength of its affiliates, and it's through these opportunities to learn from one another that we strengthen our collective voice. Today's webinar marks the beginning of an important conversation for HomeNet International. As digital technologies continue to reshape economies and labor markets, it's essential that home-based workers are not left behind. Instead, they must be recognized, heard, and included in shaping the future of work. We hope that today's discussion has sparked new ideas and will encourage further dialogue within your organizations and across our network. Finally, I would like to thank our interpreters and the HomeNet International Secretariat for all the work that has been done, and they made this webinar possible. We look forward to continue this conversation in future learning sessions and working together to ensure that the rights, voices, and contributions of home-based workers remain at the center of the discussions on the future of work. Thank you once again for joining us today. We wish you all a wonderful day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are joining us from. In solidarity, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Edileza. Please, one more request. Open your camera so that we take a group photo. Thank you so much, everyone. Kindly open your cameras for a photo. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So Eduardo will help us with taking the photo and he will let us know when it's done. Thank you so much. Eduardo, are you done? Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for making this webinar possible with your presence. Bye for now.